What is going on, y'all? This is the Caveman. I'm here with Football with Oz Austin for episode 64 of Against the Blitz. Another random episode drop. We're still trying to figure out what makes sense where, but today we are going to kind of spice up the topic and do something that isn't as rigid as predictions and reactions. And we're going to talk about head coaches after the first 3 weeks, kind of leaking into week 4 here, and who we think could potentially be on the hot seat or at least in conversations within the next few weeks for potentially getting warm. So Austin kind of broke this down with a 5-star category rating type of thing that he'll get into. But before that, join the Discord server, link down below, football talk every day. But let's get right into this one.
Yeah, so not all hot seats are the same, which is kind of why we broke it into 5 different categories. Number 1 being 100% safe. Number 2 being safe for now, but we got to see improvement. 3 means you're on thin ice, pal. 4 means they should be gone, but we're not sure if they're actually going to be. And then number 5 is they are 100% gone, and I would bet on it.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of coaches in the league after 3 weeks that you could put some sort of spin on for all of these ratings. And some might be controversial, some might not be, but I think the fun part of this is that I don't think there will be any unanimous decision. There might be amongst us, but at least as far as the public goes, there are so many interesting opinions about coaches and coordinators as such.
It's just like a finger pointing game. It's like we talk about it all the time with offensive coordinators. Every time the offense struggles, we blame the offensive coordinator. Every time the team struggles, we blame the coach. Like sometimes it's warranted, and we'll get into that of coaches we think are at fault. And sometimes for maybe some of our lower scores, we don't necessarily think that the coach is always at fault.
Well, we'll start with one guy that we might feel like is 100% at fault. At the top of our list is Titans' second-year coach, Brian Callahan. I gave him a 5-star rating, or 5 on the alarm scale, kind of like GTA 5 stars, like,
Yes.
The cops are after this motherfucker. He needs to get out of town fast. I think it's pretty obvious as to why, right?
Yeah. Like you know how hard it is to get 5 stars in GTA? It's really hard to do, and I think he did it. He has committed enough crime, enough murder, enough theft in Nashville to warrant a 5-star rating. Going 3-14 last year, really no identity. Last year, it just felt like they were compiling players for the sake of it, and then this year they kind of did the exact same thing and have started off to a winless start. Uninspiring guy, had to just give up play calling. He's packing his bags 100%.
Absolutely. And it's kind of weird. Like I always wondered from the second he got hired how he got the job. And I tried to put myself in the shoes of the Tennessee front office. And I think there were probably a number of factors going on, one of which being there probably weren't many takers. Like I think that is a thing where coordinators are like, you know what? I don't want that job. That's setting me up for failure. I think that was probably part of it. Another part of it, too, is I think that was kind of during the fad of, like, we need offensive-minded head coaches nowadays. Like, there was, like, a short, 2 to 3 year period where no one thought a defensive head coach was a good idea because then you're suddenly cycling through OCs constantly with your franchise quarterback. So I think Tennessee thought they were playing, like, some 3D chess here by getting what they might have thought was an underrated offensive mind. But as you said, there's just none of that innovation that you would expect to see in said offensive mind. When you make a hire like this, they're supposed to come in and maybe have a Ben Johnson type of effect at its ceiling. And there hasn't even been any spark, period. I think Will Levis got worse from Vrabel to Callahan, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, it was asking him to quarterback a system that he had no business doing. Like you can't ask Jalen Hurts to go run 5 wide and just dice people up. Like quarterbacks are designed to play a certain way, and Callahan wanted it done his way, but he hasn't had the guy yet to play it the Callahan way, which is why they don't score points. And they're one of the very few teams that I can look at top to bottom, and I don't understand the direction that they're going. Even like the Saints, like some of these bad teams, I can still kind of get the direction that they're wanting to go. I kind of get the vibe of what they're wanting to do, but the Titans, I have no idea. They're just compiling as many old people as possible on their team, and none of it's doing any good. So I think they need a opposite person of Callahan. They don't need some possible offensive passing guru. They need a guy like a Vrabel that can bring some kind of oomph to their locker room.
Yeah, they almost feel like a franchise that needs the Dan Campbell or the Nick Siriannis of the world to kind of come in and pick the right coordinators and just kind of rebuild the culture, because it's gotten to that basement floor of like no one even wants to be there. Like, at least it feels like from the outside. So, and I love how they're parading this. At least some people are parading this play calling shift to what's his name? Bo Hardigree, is that his name? And he apparently took over play calling duties in 2023 for the Raiders. And at that time, the Raiders were averaging 15 points per game and like 270 yards per game. And he helped that by moving the numbers to 22 points per game and like 300 yards per game. So it went from like being complete dog shit to being just bad. That's probably just what's going to happen here. Like, it just is, it's not going to be a good improvement, just like not terrible, I guess.
Yeah, he's never really escaped the like quarterback coach / offensive assistant role throughout his entire career. That's not a good thing. Like, he's been doing this since like 2015, and it's never been able to really level up past quarterback coach, except for, like you said, the one time getting an interim offensive coordinator job. That was it. So not really much of a good thing to see, especially when, Brian Callahan is brought in to be that offensive mind. That's the literal entire reason he's there. No, like he's as boring as it comes. He is like uninspiring. The only thing he was meant to do was call plays at a high level, get their passing game going, and he sucks at it. So I would bet pretty significant money that he's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Possibly before the year ends.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's like, you were hired for one reason, buddy, and you can't even do that remotely decently. So he has to be.
Get him out of here.
The next coach on our list, who was not, how do I want to put this? He's not the first coach to be potentially wanted in Pittsburgh, and that's Mike Tomlin. The last one was Matt Canada, and I think he was wanted dead. Mike Tomlin is probably just wanted fired.
Yeah.
But what was your star rating for Mike Tomlin here?
I gave him a 2. I gave him a 2. And it's just like we talked about a million times. If they keep like they're 2-1, if they keep winning, there's no way they can possibly fire him. If they get back to 500 with this mediocre roster, then they can't fire him. They don't have the excuse.
No, they don't. It's just hell. It really is. Like,
it is hell.
It's just endless. This endless loop of mediocrity, and I had a hard time leveraging whether or not I should rate it based on like if I think they should be gone versus will they be gone. Like, I think 4 stars fit this because I think they 100% should be gone, or he should be gone. But I like you said, he won't be. It's just there's just no.
Yeah.
There's no rationale. All those guys are looking at over there is the win-loss, and as long as it fits the description. But the fact of the matter is, this team has the most expensive defense in the NFL, and they don't look good. They haven't looked good from the back half of last season. And, I think Tomlin is one of those guys that always seems to get more out of what he has. But this year, A, it doesn't feel like he's doing that, and B, at what point do you start wondering, like, whose fault is it that he doesn't have nice things? Like, isn't that partially his
fault? That was my question. It was like, I don't have like an eye into their locker room, so I don't understand how much of an influence he truly has in their personnel decisions. Because if he didn't have any, I would give him a 0. I would never even blame him because he's not working with great stuff. But I do know he's pretty involved, at least in the draft. And they've actually done a really good job drafting the last decade or two. He's been phenomenal at that. But the free agency stuff, the trades, like, I don't know how much of that is Omar Khan and how much of that is Tomlin. But it seems that everybody kind of feels like that's Omar Khan's shtick, is like the trades and the free agents, while Tomlin's more of like the draft guy and like the coaching figure outer, but the coaching decisions have not been amazing. They've been hyper conservative. They're not working great. Getting an Arthur Smith, like, it's not a terrible choice. It's just not one that's going to win you a Super Bowl. And that kind of seems like every decision they've made is like, it's not terrible. It's not the worst thing, but they're not any closer to winning a Super Bowl since like the Killer Bees were there.
Mike Tomlin has figured out a way to generate generational wealth by not like getting fired. Like, he is literally doing a decent enough job to keep his job, but he doesn't have to really try much harder to win anything because he's just collecting paychecks. Like, is this what this all is? Just doing enough to make sure he keeps his job. But if he has to invest any more, he just cuts it there. Like, he just, I don't know.
Like, there's been coaches that have been fired for this. Like, Jeff Fisher was the king of 8-8. And he was a good coach for a while. Like, he got a lot of credit, but then they kind of realized, like, he's too old school. He plateaued. He's 8-8 for the rest of history. We got to move on. But Tomlin has been there since, like, I've been a kid.
Yeah.
Like, it would be really, really hard for somebody that has basically grown this franchise. Like, he was here before everybody in that, like, office was there, pretty much. So it's like really, really hard for them to say, hey, I know you've been here before us. You're basically like Mr. Steeler, but you got to go, pal. Especially when the results aren't bad. They're not great. And they haven't been great, and they're not going to be great. And that's the problem. But I just don't think they'll be able to do it.
No, you're right. And I guess it just is, and we joke about it all the time, like the Mike Tomlin black magic, like, there really is no reason for them to keep getting away with this, but they somehow do. Like, I still can't rack my brain enough to figure it out. And the other angle of it too, that is something that matters a lot to me, is like, if you're not going to be good at what you're supposed to be good at, and that's Mike Tomlin and his defense, and that's kind of been his thing for quite a while. Like, if that's not going to work, then you have to be making it up somewhere else. And other than the win-loss, which is the mind-boggling part about it, he doesn't manage games well. He's extremely poor at making decisions in game. He just punted on 4th and 1 at the 50 like 2 weeks ago, and that's been something he's kind of become known for doing. Just very conservative. He's behind the times. The list goes on, but that's basically why I'm confused. Like, there is nothing pointing to a good football team here, but they managed to make it out alive every season. So
it's just, I just don't understand how you can be so conservative at this point in time. Like, you look at every successful coach, Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Shanahan, none of them have an ounce of conservatism to their identity. All they want to do is just punch, splash plays. The Steelers, like, Aaron Rodgers is averaging 4.8 like yards per like attempt. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I don't understand how they're not pushing the ball. It is just dink, 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 dink. There is zero attempt to push the ball downfield. There is zero attempt to go score points. Their leading receiver is Jalen Warren. Nothing makes sense. They paid DK Metcalf to be the 4th highest paid receiver in the league, and he's not even their leading receiver in a team that has terrible receivers. Like, it just doesn't. Nothing they're doing right now makes sense. There is a vision, like this hyper conservative offense that doesn't turn the ball over. Hopefully they have good pass rush and secondary, but they're all ancient. Everyone there is ancient. And if they keep giving up all their draft capital, they're just going to look like the exact same team every single year.
Yeah, it's something's got to give eventually. Maybe someone in Pittsburgh will start a petition, and maybe, I don't know. Like,
I think Omar Khan should go. I think he's done a horrific job of having good things and doing nothing with them. And then giving TJ Watt that insane contract was just the icing on the cake for my opinions on him. But if Tomlin has as much influence in this as some people say, then he can go too.
That trade, that Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick flop was also just another example of what is going on here.
All three of them have kind of not been that good this year at all. So
right.
Nothing makes sense. Nothing about that trade made any sense for anybody. Like, there was no need to do it. We've talked about that tirelessly, but Yeah, nothing they're doing is inspiring.
I feel like if we polled like every single person, hypothetically speaking, that watches football, I think we would probably get like 80% of people say he should be fired at this point. I don't think there's many
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin believers left.
I think a lot of people think that a lot of people should be fired, though. Like, it's usually people's first thing is just like, he's not doing a good enough job, fire him. But then you got to think about who could replace him. And if you don't think you're getting Joe Brady, and you're not getting like maybe Cliff Kingsbury, you're like, well, who would be left? Mike McCarthy? Who realistically would the Steelers hire? And like, I don't think anybody better than Tomlin. I don't think they could get Joe Brady. I don't think they can get any of those guys.
I guess it depends. I don't know. I feel like it depends, like the other jobs that were available at the time. But if I were a coach, I think there are a lot of aspects of it that we don't consider, of course, at least not at face value. Like for someone that's, maybe a Joe Brady, that personnel might not be the most attractive, but you look at how long Mike Tomlin was there and how well they treated him. Like there's probably a lot of benefits from an internal standpoint that would attract a new hire, or at least put them at the top of the list for the top candidates that cycle. So I don't know. I do think like at some point, even if the grass isn't greener, I would rather go find that out than just look at orange grass for the next 4 years.
That's just not the Steeler way. They just don't do that. It just like they have a way. They have the Steeler way, and that's just not it. But I don't know. I don't think he's fired. I think he's still got some time.
Yeah, they'll live in their prehistoric ways for
the
next 10 years. The next man on this list, Raheem Morris. You know what? I think you all know how I feel about Raheem Morris. If you've been watching this show for any amount of time, I think he should have been fired preseason. I've been saying he's going to get fired at some point this year. I still think that's the case, especially following a 30-point loss to arguably the worst team in football. Raheem Morris, 5-star criminal.
Yeah, I had like a 4.5 where I'm like, I don't know if they fully have the balls to do it. I do ultimately think he does get fired, though. Like, I think they're 1-2 right now. They got dominated by a bad Panthers team. They got lucky and beat the Vikings on like their worst possible day of injuries and JJ McCarthy being bad. Like, nothing made sense in that win. They're just boring. Their play calling is boring. Their defense is boring. Their decision making under Raheem Morris is horrific. And he's boring. Nothing about Raheem Morris needs to be a head coach in the NFL right now. Like, their team could be worse. They might end up with an okay record, but like, they're not a good football team, and he's not a good football coach. I think they're tired of him, and they're going to move on.
Arthur Blank has fired him once before. Granted, it was an interim role, but in 2020, he took over as the interim, and they decided he wasn't good enough to hold on to, and Blank made that choice before. So there's familiarity here. Like, if I'm Arthur Blank, I feel like, assuming the season continues on the pace that it's going, I've seen plenty. And that's not even considering his tenure with the Bucs. This guy, in his entire career, is 30-49 with a record above 500 just once across 6 seasons. And the other part of just not being head coach material is like, at least be likable. Like, he does nothing about coaching well, and then he's also just not likable. Like, he just does not take responsibility for shit in press conferences. They asked him about Penix being the starter versus Kirk potentially in the future, and he just goes, no, not Kirk, not starting Kirk. Like, okay, asshole. Like, you don't have to be a jerk about it. But just the way he responds to reporters, like, there's just literally nothing about this human being that deserves to be in this role. And we talk about the Siriannis, the Campbells, the guys that are culture lifters that know who to put in the right positions to be successful. He hasn't done that either. Jimmy Lake was his top defensive coordinator hire. He was gone last year. Now, poor Zach Robinson is getting pulled down on the field because their offense looks like a disaster, and he's going to get scapegoated. So that will be two.
That's the only reason I didn't put him at 5 is I thought they might fire Zach Robinson first.
They will, but that will just be an indictment after two of his 2 top hires that he brought with him gone after 2 seasons. That's an indictment on the coach. And I think Arthur Blank is smart enough to realize that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bad thing that we were talking in the Discord earlier that Zach Robinson was my lead candidate to be the head coach at Oklahoma State next year. Like, that's how bad I think that this will go. But Yeah. I mean, of all defensive coaches, I think the Falcons now have a really cool setup with their young pass rush and how good it can be and their pieces in the secondary. You could bring in a Flores, someone that is a defensive mind, but could actually bring some juice and some actual good play calling. Like any of the issues that Flores ever had, Raheem Morris is not any better at them.
No.
Like he's not good at team morale. He does nothing with the offense, and he's not even that good of a defensive coach. They've been a very average defense since he's been there this entire time, and they are just now establishing a pass rush. And that's only because they spent 2 first-round picks on edge rushers. Like it's not like they schemed up anything special. He just does nothing at a high level, and like you talked about that earlier, if you don't have some kind of coaching calling card, whether it's decision making, it's team morale, it's play calling on either side of the ball, he doesn't have anything. So right now, he seems like a pretty shoe-in to be a 5 and get fired this season.
I think the nail in the coffin, or the realization maybe for Arthur Blank, will be if this team is like, I don't know, a 5 or 6 win team. They're just shit.
Yeah.
Everything just really sucks. And then they're like, oh my God, we don't even have a first rounder. And they're like, you know what? This fucking guy's got to go. We spent 2 first rounders this year, like you said. The defense is still mid. We don't have one this year. Like, this guy can't be back. Once the draft rolls around and they're like, man, we suck for nothing. Yeah, get his ass out of here.
Yeah. I Arthur Blank, I feel like, is just so hands off from this team now. Like he owns the 2 most like hands off things of all time in the PGA store and Home Depot. Like those are like the most hands off things of all time. The Falcons are
Home Depot. That's
yeah. The Falcons are just like that too. It's like they've been the most irrelevant team in football, despite being pretty decent at times. And I feel like that just goes to show that Raheem Morris, as bad as he's been, I don't know if he gets enough notice for how bad he is. Yeah. And that's what we try and do. And that's what you mainly try and do, is give a little notice as like, hey, people aren't talking about how bad Raheem Morris is enough. Like for some reason people talk about Daboll, they talk about McDaniel, but Raheem Morris might be number 1 on most fireable coaches.
Yeah, he's right up there with Callahan for me. I think both those guys are equal.
Yeah.
A guy that I was not as confident in as far as deciding my star rating was Kevin Stefanski. This is such a fucked up situation. It makes it so hard to determine like where blame should go. But the bottom line is Stefanski has 2 Coach of the Year awards, which is still kind of surprising to me. And similar to Tomlin in a way, he has done a good job, I feel like, of getting a lot out of what he's given. But at what point do we decide, okay, it's his fault for what he has? That's kind of the question I continue to ask, especially this year.
Mm-hmm. For me, I gave him a lot more grace because he hasn't been there that long compared to someone like Tomlin. And we've seen some pretty decent success. Like they were one of the best defenses in the NFL 2 years ago. And they made the playoffs despite having really bad offensive personnel. And I do think it's pretty easy to finger point at Andrew Berry. Like he's pretty easy to be like, that guy's dumb. Like he makes really bad decisions. But the Browns, as bad as they are right now, you can look at them and be like, they have a good squad, like to a degree. Like they have really good pieces. The defense looks like it's completely back to that 2023 form. Like you said, he has 2 Coach of the Year awards under his belt because he has been able to turn trash into a meal at times in his career. So the only time I think he's even close to fireable is when they perform under par and they have a decent squad. Like once he gets his quarterback, if they still suck, fire him, whatever. But I gave him a 1. I think they understand that he's doing the best he can. And he's the only reason that they're not the worst team in football right now.
I realized I never even said what my rating was. I gave him a 3, and I think that is a lower 3. Like it's more likely to go down than up, especially coming off of a win against the Packers most recently.
Yeah, that kept him up. That kept him way up.
And the biggest thing that I need, like I said, I need clarity with this whole situation. And I think seeing how he handles the quarterback carousel that they have going on this year will be very telling, because it's not like they're winning or in games because of Flacco. Flacco's actually, he's been terrible. He's thrown like 2 touchdowns to 4 picks in 3 games. He has an average depth of target that ranks like 32nd out of all 35 eligible quarterbacks. So it's like, at what point are we going to try something different? Because the veteran that you're leaning on right now is not doing anything to help you. So, in fact, he's hurting you. Like turning the ball over 4 times in 3 games is actively hurting. So, at what point does he start to try and figure out what he has in his rookies? So, how he handles this, which I know will be a Kevin Stefanski decision confidently, will tell me what I need to know about how I should feel about him going forward.
Mhm.
So, he's on watch right now.
He is, but he has stuff you can point to. Like, even though he's not really a defensive guru, they've made some really good hires. Getting Jim Schwartz in there has been a beautiful, beautiful hiring, who is putting together one of the best defenses in the league right now. And it's been one of the best defenses in the league for a couple of years, despite last year. I think his in-game decision-making is usually pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they lost to the Bengals not because of him. Like, they lost because, and it wasn't even Flacco's fault. He threw 2 picks, but that was because 2 receivers dropped balls directly into the DB's hands. It's just been like, they just haven't had the star personnel to move the football. Like, they've had to use Harold Fannin and Dylan Sampson and Quinshawn Judkins have been their 3 best skill position players, and they're all rookies. Jerry Jeudy's been nowhere to be found. It's just been weird. But I think another thing is that I can hang my hat on is that despite all of the horrific human beings that Andrew Berry has brought through this team, they haven't had a bad locker room. Like pretty rarely has it ever felt like there's been like a lot of issues between the players. Like, usually when you have a guy like Deontay Johnson that had any issues, they're like, okay, bye. Like, even Deshaun Watson, who like I feel like he did a pretty good job of handling that and not letting that affect the team a ton.
Yeah, it does feel like you would think it'd be the opposite, but when you compare them to, like, let's say what was going on with the Colts last year, that was a shit show. The Steelers always seem to have some sort of shit storm going on over there, as well as we think they're managed and Tomlin does a good job of organizing. They usually have some shit going on. Like, you would think bringing in criminals would create a toxic environment. And I'm sure there's probably an awkwardness, but it's never at least public to the point where, like, why is Jonathan Taylor getting on my owner's bus? Like, what is going on here? Like, that shit doesn't really happen in Cleveland. So,
yeah,
it is shocking, but it's true.
Like, and to me, the reason I was so easy to do this is, like, if I put Raheem Morris and Mike Tomlin, if you put them on the Bills today, I don't think, I think the teams actively get worse. But I think if you put Stefanski on the Bills, I think they're still a rock solid, really good football team, possibly even better. Like, it would be a really good product, and I think that's just gives me confidence that he is a good coach. And he has just been given shit hands after shit hands. The quarterback situation, all of that has been ownership and management, and I don't think that's been on him. I don't think that he has earned a big voice like Tomlin, where he has a huge hand in who they bring in. So I don't blame him just yet.
That's a good way to think about it. I mean, we sit here constantly and say, well, if Justin Herbert was with the Eagles, then they'd have 4 Super Bowls. We make that comparison in those hypotheticals all the time. And I think it's time we start doing the same with coaches. And I feel like there's been a small, like, uprising of starting to rank or talk about the quality of staffs. I think that's starting to become a thing. So that's also a very real thing we do all the time. So we might as well do it with coaches. And that's fair. I think if Stefanski was the Bills head coach, it probably would be smooth sailing. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's 2 parts to it. Like, I think some people blame coaches too much when they're given a shit hand. Like if me and you are playing chess, even if you're a much better chess player, if I set your pieces on fire, you're going to have a really hard time beating me. But, like, at the same time, it does matter. Like, being a good, like, there is no sport where good coaches matter more than football because of just how organized the game is and how many moving pieces there are. So it does matter. But I think Stefanski has done a good job of moving the terrible pieces he's had. Like, they're made of barbed wire. They're not fun to handle. But he's done a decent job at handling it. That's why I gave him a 1. I think he's very safe.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like 3 was probably strong now that we've kind of talked it over. But like I said, it is more of an on watch because I want to see how this
Sure.
specific quarterback thing goes, and then I'll feel better about going a little higher or
Mhm.
lower.
Sure.
Kellen Moore was a guy going into 2025 that I was not too excited about. I think the Saints were caught with their pants down. They had no quarterback. They had no defense. They have no money. And they had really no options. Like, I don't think many coordinators were too excited or intrigued with going there, kind of talking about that whole idea. Like, Joe Brady, honestly, probably turned them down. I think they would have hired
Mhm.
Joe Brady if he gave them the chance. That's complete speculation. I know nothing. But um, with that said, Kellen Moore, even though being 0-3, I think has done a tremendous job, and I would give him a 1 right now
Mhm.
comfortably. Like, this is a team performing above expectation on every level. So I think he is absolutely going to be around for at least another year.
Yeah. I too gave him a 1 because except for the Seahawks game, which was kind of a mismatch of personnel. They haven't really looked bad. Like they've been competitive in 2 games. I think he's handled the quarterback situation well. If he had a say in the Tyler Shuck draft pick, though, I will dock him a point for sure.
Mm,
But I do think that most of their issues just stem from management as well. Um, I don't think that he himself has shown anything bad as a coach. Like I think that they're a team, and it's not easy to see, but I do think that there is a little bit of a vision there. He came in late, like he wasn't an early hire; he was a late hire, and was given a shit hand. His quarterback retired, right before he was about to get
oh,
there. Derek Carr's retired out of nowhere, and they're stuck with Rattler. They're stuck with a mediocre offensive core. They're stuck with a mediocre defense, mediocre staff, really. Um, but I think this is going to be a weird one. Like, do they stick with Rattler? Do they draft a quarterback first overall? If they pick there, do they draft Nussmeier, who is the son of their current offensive coordinator? There's a lot of weird decisions that could be going down. But overall, I think that he's done a good enough job to not get fired year 1. Like year 1 to get fired, you have to put on a shit show. You have to have a shitty locker room, or you have to lose every game by 30. And they've only lost 1 game by 30 so far. The rest of the games have looked pretty good. So I'm not too worried.
no, me either. And something that I think he deserves a lot of credit for, whether he had a say in the Tyler Shuck pick or not, for him to have the balls to go against the grain and still start Rattler, I think that took a lot of trust in himself and confidence in himself that he was making the right decision, because everyone and their mother had Shuck lined up as the starting quarterback because you just spent the 40th overall pick on him.
Right.
So it's like the lead that gave Shuck in itself should have been insurmountable. And honestly, I don't, as much as I love Rattler and I think he's played well, I don't know if we saw anything in the preseason that pushed Rattler over that edge of the draft pick compensation that it took.
Right.
So for him to feel that confident in Rattler, I think says a lot about who Moore is as a coach. He's looking for the right things, and I think that decision was great. Basically, is
Mm.
my point.
Yeah. I mean, like I was saying before, like he's had a couple things that we can look to and say, I think he handled that well. And he hasn't had anything yet where we can say he handled that poorly. So
Mhm.
I think he's bought himself another year. And I don't think even if they're poor next season, I don't think he even gets fired next year if they stay on the current trajectory.
Agreed. Someone else that's a bit more confusing though is Dave Canales.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on Dave Canales? Because this went from a situation of like, man, he doesn't got much help, and he didn't have a quarterback, or he just wasn't given the right hand. But now we're getting to a point where, where are the issues really stemming from? What were your thoughts?
I ended up giving him a 2. And this my issues with the Panthers have had nothing to do with him. Have had nothing to do with their play calling or their decision making. It's purely been just roster construction. I think that they've done a very poor job of constructing a winning football roster. When you're given Xavier Legette as a first round pick, and he currently has -2 yards after catch on the season. Like that was he was drafted to go like be a yak demon, and he has negative yards. Like they have like Austin Tremaine or whatever is out there. Bryson Tremaine is like their third leading receiver. It's weird stuff. I don't think that's on Canales. I think that they've done a good job in multiple games of putting together a winning recipe, out scheming the other team, being prepared. I don't think this is on Canales. I think that if anything, he's been the only bright spot. They've had defensive issues, but he's not a defensive guy. And I think that they have a talented defensive coach or defensive coordinator. I just don't think that they have the dogs to get it done. I think if anything, we look to their GM and ask questions about him, maybe give him a 4 or a 5. But the head coach, I think he's done a fine job.
I think a 2 is fair. I feel like Canales, like if you would have asked me this a year ago, or maybe anybody a year ago for that matter, it would be a 1. Because like, how could you possibly blame Canales for all of the shit that's been going on? That was kind of the perspective. But I think at this point, a 2 is fitting because the issues are still occurring, and at some point you have to start pointing at the top. And I don't think we're at that point yet, but there definitely has to be improvement, or else we're certainly going to be standing here like, hey, you, what's going on here? Like everyone claims it's not your fault, but what, do you have an explanation for this? What's your plan? Like there still needs to be some sort of future, which that's the problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is like, do you have a plan? And that's why I created number 2 is safe for now, but you have to improve. Like, what's your plan? What is like, we don't even need to see the numbers improve. We just need to see the process. Like we need to see, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan to somehow fix your pass rush? Do you have a plan to bring in possibly a new defensive coordinator if your defense doesn't improve? Like, do you have a plan for any of these things? And it seemed like they had a little bit of a plan. Like they went after pass rushers in the draft. They went after Ted McMillan. Like there's a plan to improve the positions of need, but so far it just has not worked. But they had a really, really nice win against the Falcons where they definitely seemed like they were the better coach team. So we can clearly see he's not on that Raheem Morris level yet. Like when you watch these Falcons games, you're not like, wow, this is an unprepared squad. Like they're not ready to go. It's just like they just don't have literally like the guys to do it yet.
Yeah, that's really the problem with the Panthers. And I got in this argument, this is kind of off topic, with some people on Twitter about how the Panthers took McMillan 8th overall, and like, yeah, no shit. There's no pass rush right now. I think it was a tweet talking about their pass rush. And I said, well, I'm so glad they got their receiver 8th overall. And then everyone's like, oh, but he's got X amount of yards, whatever they said. And I guess the only defense to drafting McMillan 8th is like, I guess who else would they have drafted there?
Sure.
And I don't know. And that's kind of where I kind of was like, okay, fine. You guys, you win. But yeah. Still, I don't know. I felt like that need was just glaring.
It's a glaring need, and they got talented guys in Nick Scorton and Princely Umanuelen in the second round, but like that's it. Is this our plan? This is like that's kind of like the kicker here is like, is this it?
Yeah.
Like, are we not going to go after any high profile guys? We're just going to rock with like the most boring defense possible. Bryce Young's our quarterback. Ted McMillan's our like only reasonable wide receiver. Maybe when Jalen Coker comes back, this whole thing flips on its head. But I don't know when that is. I don't know how bad he's hurt. That was like a whole secret. I don't know. But of all their issues, like we've talked about, it's all draft issues, free agency issues, possibly a Bryce Young issue if he doesn't figure it out at some point. But I really don't think we can fully blame Canales whatsoever.
I agree. And I feel the same way about Brian Daboll. I gave Brian Daboll a 3. I think Brian Daboll is unfortunately getting hitched to the Joe Shane wagon. And it seems like whatever happens with the two, he is the result of he's collateral. Like I think there are more things to point toward Joe Shane about. And that's the perspective of other people. I don't even think the Giants combo of Daboll and Shane have done that poorly, to be quite honest. I think the letting go of Saquon was very overblown. I think that ultimately was probably the better move for that team. I think the moving on from Julian Love and things that went on with some of their guys on defense might have been questionable, but generally speaking, like I don't think they've done that bad of a job. And Jackson Dart and how he plays will be very, very it will decide their future, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm just confused why there's this urgency when you would assume drafting a project would mean that they were given more leash. But now that leash has just been evaporated because Russell Wilson sucks. But now you're going to your development plan. I don't know. I feel like it's very screwed up, but I give them a 3.
I think everything that they've done this offseason screams that this will be a 5. Because they seem like they're in panic mode right now. Like, I think that ownership has talked to them saying, hey, this is it, man. Like, you have not had a successful team at any point. Like, do you know off the top of your head how many times since 2016 the Giants have had more than 6 wins?
2, maybe.
1.
It was 1.
One time, and they had 9 wins one time. When they had a pretty stacked squad. Like, they had Saquon and Xavier McKinney and Julian Love, and like they had a really talented squad where all of those guys left and are now better than they were on the Giants. But yeah, I think that he's just so gone. Like the last 3 seasons, 6-11, 3-14 last year, and they've started off 0-3. And it's not even like to point fingers and say whose fault it is. It's just the fact that like it's similar to Tomlin, where it's like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take having the exact same record every year, except instead of like 9 wins, it's 6 or fewer. Or it's 4 or 6 is usually how many they end up with. So I think that at a certain point, as the owners, they can't just keep begging the fans to understand. I think at a certain point, they're just going to say, I'm sorry, Dayball. We just can't keep giving the fans 5 wins every single year. And I think they're finally going to pull the plug.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it's trending in that direction. But yeah, I guess that's just where I'm confused. Like if I'm ownership and I see that my team trades up into the first round for this project that you're trusting your coach to develop, like wouldn't that mean you're willing to understand whatever struggles are met in 2025 with the schedule that they had on tap? And I thought their move of getting Russell and Jameis meant that they were going to do whatever they can to keep Dart on the bench. It just, if I'm understanding things correctly, it feels like the plan just got flipped on its head, and Dable is now kind of just like, fuck, like, why is this suddenly how it is? What happened to what we talked about before? Why is it suddenly like do or die when we were at a different understanding before the season? I could be completely wrong, but I'm just reading tea leaves. And that's why I feel like it's not as much of a conclusion as it feels, because I also think Dart will be a little bit of a spark that might potentially save it. So,
and I think that's, like you said, like I think this decision rides on Dart, and it shouldn't, but I think it will, because ownership isn't as savvy as a lot of people think. It's very much just results based. It's not about your process. They don't care if you've been trying to do it the right way this whole time. They look at Daniel Jones, and you had Daniel Jones this entire time. He leaves, and now he's an all-pro quarterback somehow. Like somehow every Giant that leaves is better. Evan Ingram leaves, he is better. Xavier McKinney leaves, he's an all-pro. Daniel Jones leaves, he's a top 5 quarterback right now. Like every single person that leaves the Giants has become better, and I think that ownership is starting to realize this. And I think they're tired of it. And I think that if Jackson Dart doesn't become good immediately, like I think Daboll's gone. And I don't think that they're saying like this is his fault. I think this is just Daboll's last Hail Mary of like, if I can get this kid to be good, we have a chance as a team. But if it's Jameis, even if they win a game or 2 with Jameis, there's still no future. But if he can prove that he can win with Dart, he might be able to save his job. But if not, I think he's 100% gone.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, well, it is. It's not even a feels like thing anymore. Dart is starting. This means this is it for Dable. So that is definitely it.
It's a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike McDaniel. He is a guy that has been, I feel like Mike McDaniel's been on the hot seat for like a year and a half now. Like, I don't think he's been a fan favorite for quite some time. And I ended up giving him a 4-star. Like, all signs point to this guy being a very good coordinator, not a leader of men. And that is not even just about his appearance physically, which I do think matters, believe it or not, but also just the things that we see go on in this locker room, the buffoonery that seems to be happening with the players. Like, there is just, it doesn't seem like, I mean, I guess I can't say, but I get a sense that they don't respect him. There's no like authority in the locker room. And when the play calling and the scheme is all breaking and, you know, you're talking about the calling card stuff isn't going to plan, and then you also can't be a coach, then, you know, he should be gone. But I think they'll fire Chris Grier first. I think that's where they'll start.
I think they could. But like you said, I think there's the tomfoolery, the buffoonery, all that has happened in this locker room is just inexcusable, and it has not gotten any better. I gave him a 4.5 to plan a play safe. Like, I think he's gone. I think he should be gone. They've been, like, people are kind of talking like he's gone, but I'm not 100% sure because, I mean, 2 years ago he had 11 wins, and even last year they scrapped for 8 wins, which is not that bad, counting all the injuries they had. And I think that they've done a fairly poor job team building. I think just Tua's injuries and Tyreek's issues, Waddle's injuries, they've had a lot of bad luck too. But it's just like you said, like the whole leader of men, you know, kind of mentality, like the Dan Quinns of the world. It's why they can keep getting head coaching jobs, because there's a difference between a play caller and a head coach. And I think Mike McDaniel could get any offensive coordinator job he wants. He's really good at it. He's clearly really good at it. I mean, he had 11 wins just purely from their offense 2 years ago. But yeah, as a head coach, as, you know, the leader of the Miami Dolphins, I think that he's done with that, because they're 0-3 right now, and they definitely should not be.
Yeah, they shouldn't. The thing that kept this from being a 5 was, for the first time in a while, I felt like against Buffalo, they showed like they cared. They showed fight. Like McDaniel like had that fieriness to him on the sideline. Like, he was getting animated. Like, he's always just kind of mellow. You know, he's just got his, you know, sheet up in front of his face. Like, there isn't much energy. I think that also plays into it. But that was the first time against the Bills where I felt like that was existing. So if they really if he starts to coach with that urgency, the team starts to play with a little bit of a fire under their ass, like we saw against Buffalo, then I think there's a chance for him. And it will be a decision. Like, at this point, they're kind of stuck with Tua. I'm not sure what the out is or when it comes. So he's on the trail. He's on the hook. You can't get rid of McDaniel because he's the only one that's ever made him work. But they will probably have to fire somebody. So, and Chris Grier has been around for way too long to be getting away with this anymore. So
it should be Grier. And I think Dolphins fans want Grier's head more than anybody. I don't hear as much about McDaniel. I think people are frustrated with the way the season's gone and how last season went, but you can't really put it all on him. But like the personnel decisions that Grier has made haven't been great, but they don't have a losing roster. Like, they don't have a terrible roster. Their corners aren't as bad of an issue as everyone thought. Like, those aren't the main issues here. It's just the morale of the team. And if they can't get that back, I think McDaniel's pretty safe to be gone. But if they can show that fight that they showed against Buffalo, I think they have a puncher's chance to stay.
Yeah. Well, will the Bengals show any fight this year? Zach Taylor's head could be staring at the sharp blade of a guillotine if they don't. I gave him a 3. It just feels like it doesn't feel like it's going to get better, but I also don't get the sense that this team is, you know, as we know, they're not in the neighborhood of change. They love to just kind of be content. And I think that Zach Taylor hasn't done so far through 3 weeks, poorly enough, I guess, to get me to a 4 or 5. It could get to that point, but like I said, I still think it would take another week 3 performance, like 10 more times for him to be gone. So I'll give him a
Yes.
3.
Like if they can return to kind of how they were like the first time Jake Browning played, and they'll lose a couple of those, and they did back then, but they also were scrappy in some. And if they can show that fight, I think that he has zero chance of being fired. Especially when you have a guy that's so close and is partially responsible for how good Joe Burrow has been and how good this offense and passing attack has been. Especially when you've been to a Super Bowl and you've been to really big playoff games. You've been to AFC championships that you would have won if you didn't have certain penalties. Like, he has been a very good coach at times, but just here recently, nothing good has changed. But I don't really blame him as much. I think a lot of this is on front office stuff. I think a lot of it's on ownership. I think a lot of it's on the fact that we don't even have a GM, and the de facto GM is really, really bad at his job, and Duke Tobin. So I would like to see him go. I would like to see Duke Tobin go. They have a new defensive coordinator, so I think they'll have a little bit of leeway. And as long as the offense is looking good with Joe Burrow, that's Zach Taylor's job. Like, you talk about how a coach needs a hanging point. The Bengals have had an elite passing offense almost every year that he's been there. And that's kind of what they brought him in to be, to have Joe Burrow and to do that. So I just don't think he's gone. I don't think Burrow would let it happen. I don't think a lot of people would let that happen.
Yeah, probably not. It just, right now, I feel like coming off of that game, it feels a little bit warm, just a tiny bit, but ultimately there's just no way it falls in that direction, especially with a Joe Burrow injury. It's like, oh, another year where Burrow's hurt. How can you blame Jack Taylor? And I think that definitely is a sentiment that gets shared in an organization that does not, like I said, change much. So that's what they'll fall on. And next year is next year. So to 2026.
It took them forever to fire Marvin Lewis, like a long, long time. And people were calling for his head much more than they were calling for Zach Taylor's. So I think it'll take a while.
Agreed. A controversial coach that I've started to come around on potentially wanting gone, at least if I were a fan of said team, is John Harbaugh. He is Mike Tomlin. He's the white Mike Tomlin at this point, as far as I'm concerned. I cannot tell you how shocked I was when I saw the graphic of all of like the blown games under Harbaugh after they blew that game to Buffalo. There has been so many just dastardly collapses that are just, you can't even fathom them. Like the Dolphins collapse a few years ago.
Oh my
That's
God,
on that list. Like this one against the Bills, like the inexcusable, like, difference in performance in big games. Like, at what point are the Ravens like, wait, what if it's not the revolving door of players we have coming in and out of here? What if it's just the guy in charge? But they're never bad enough. And that's what it will come down to.
Like, you cannot fire a coach if he gets 11 wins.
No.
You can't do it. Like, that would be a stupid choice because it's pretty rare to find a coach that can get you 11 wins. And I think that he has had a lot of responsibility for their wins. I think he's a very aggressive coach, not in his decision making, but in what he tries to do. Like, he has really helped Lamar become this player. Like, he has not tried to contain him in any way. He says, go be you. Like, even bringing in guys like Pat Ricard, like experimenting with him, letting this weird D tackle be like the best fullback in the league. They experiment with a lot of stuff. And I think it works really, really well. And they've had good coordinators that have ultimately just left to go do other things. Like, if they would have been able to keep McDonald as their defensive coordinator, it would be a lot different. Zach Orr has been really, really poor for them lately, which I think is pretty responsible for a lot of their losses so far. But man, I think as long as they're a 11 plus win team, zero chance of firing him. But I did give him a 2 because if they lose to the Chiefs, they're going to start off 1-3, which is insane. And if they lose a couple more in that, if they only get like 10 wins, if they somehow went to 9 wins, if they just collapse that badly, I think his job could be in a little bit of danger, or at least have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I gave him a 2 for the same reason. this is supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. Like, I think they were like second in odds before the year started, and they might still be. I don't know, because they're just that loaded. But if they fall short of expectations that bad, like not even like a championship loss or, a Super Bowl loss, hypothetically, if they really fall on their face to the point where they're barely making it to the playoffs and missing, I think that's when the conversation will start. Not to move the goalposts for how we're kind of scaling this, but I gave them a 2 because at the end of this year, if things continue this way, then, like you said, there will be conversations had. So for Harbaugh's sake, it's not like for this year. It's, then we'll start talking about it if this continues.
Sure.
The last coach that we have on our list is DeMeco Ryans. This was another team with high hopes, and they're 0-3. This has been about as bad of a start for a team with their franchise quarterback, franchise wide receiver, franchise defensive end, and they suck. I gave DeMeco a 2, again, just based off of the principle that they're 0-3. If things don't turn around, then we might start talking about it, but we've beat this drum endlessly. It's not really his fault what's going on here. So,
yeah, and I've talked badly enough about who I think should be fired first, and that's Nick Caserio, their GM, who is just, who I think kind of clueless on how to build a winning roster, especially on offense. I think their defense is fine. I think that they played actually very well against Jacksonville, and they were put in some very, very hard situations when their offense just kept punting or turning the ball over back to Jacksonville and kept forcing them into a really difficult,
yeah.
I don't know how you're supposed to play defense when the offense just literally keeps giving them the ball back. Like, you're going to get exhausted. And DeMeco's a defensive guy. He always has been. I think the Texans defense is definitely not the reason why either of us have any issues with their team, and certainly not the reason why we can blame them for their losses. It's mostly been the fact that Stroud cannot find his footing, and whether or not you blame him for that, or you blame the offensive line, or you blame the play calling, which a lot of people have been. I think we look to them to get fired first. I think we look to Caley to get fired first, who has yet to take advantage of any of their weapons they have. Like, Nico Collins' only good play last week was a broken coverage touchdown. Like, it wasn't even like they did anything special. The Jaguars just had a miscommunication, and he was wide open. And that's kind of how bad they've looked. Like, that was the best play of the game, was a miscommunication from the defense. And I think somebody gets fired. I think that they'll point fingers at the GM who refused to build an offensive line, the offensive coordinator that can't take advantage of all the weapons he's got, or the quarterback. But I think when you look to the defensive coordinator, they've done good because that's their head coach. He is their defensive coordinator. So I feel good about that. I think that he stays. I give him a 1, but you do like to see improvement. I just don't think that that's his fault or his job.
Yeah, that's fair. Just another team that not starting off well, so you have to talk about it briefly.
Yeah, so I've talked about somebody on that team that I think should be fired, Nick Caserio, but people will always blame coaches. Like, that's always the first guy. They're the head coach. They're the head honcho. Like, they're the guy that runs the team, essentially. So when a team is underperforming, it is always fair to at least question and be like, what are they doing wrong? What could they be doing better to get more wins under their belt? But I think when you take a look at how their roster is constructed, how the coaching staff looks, you can see it's not really his fault.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that's every coach that we felt fit the description of said episode. So let us know if we missed anybody. Let us know your thoughts on the guys we talked about. If you guys enjoyed, be sure you like, commenting, subscribing, sharing. Be sure you join the Discord. You can leave your thoughts on the coaches there too. We can have a conversation if you want. And we will see you in episode 65.